Georgia and Alabama appropriately will end the SEC's divisional play, a colossal fight between the two titans of this conference for the last, decade-ish. Ryan, Curly, Dean Legge, another edition of Riding Home. We're in our eco-poly chairs getting ready for this game. Ryan, this is, I don't know if it's do or die, but boy, it's close.
Yeah, you wanna get into the college football playoff, you better win this football game. Yeah. And, we don't know how it's going to shake out where, will Georgia slip in anyway, even if it loses? But for Alabama, the stakes are pretty clear. Win, and it's going to be really, 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 really hard for the committee to say, yeah, you're not one of the 4 best teams in college football. Yeah. Lose, and you're playing for a New Year's Six bowl probably, but it's not, or maybe
they could miss out on that too.
They could
Alabama.
Miss out depending on Missouri, and they would be.
Well, Missouri and Ole Miss have both won.
Exactly.
I think they would probably stay in front of Ole Miss. They would drop
below
of
the head-to-head.
Because of the head-to-head. They would be below Missouri, so that in that scenario, Missouri would probably go to Texas, probably go to the Cotton Bowl.
A Missouri-Texas Cotton Bowl seems like it might be looming.
and again, we, as smart as we are, and from what I've heard, we're both very smart. That's what my mother says.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. But we can't read the future, so we don't know what's going to happen with Texas and Florida State and the Big Ten championship game, and even the ACC championship game with Florida State and Louisville, and just the whole mess that has become this end of the season. It's very riveting, no doubt, but all that goes out the window when you start talking about the last, real SEC championship game, the way it's constructed now, which are the two.
Yeah, these last couple of weeks are the end of the SEC, this era
as
of the
we've
SEC.
known it. Yeah, this 30-plus years.
My childhood of watching SEC football and college football in general kind of ends in the next couple of weeks.
And this, Roy Kramer needs to be given credit for having the vision for making this game in 1992, the addition of South Carolina and Arkansas. All of the things have added up, all the little bits. There's not been many games, Florida, Alabama for sure, but Georgia-Alabama has been a game that has defined the league for some time now. We've never seen the Gators and Alabama play one another for a national championship. We've seen that with these two. Let me plug this right now while I can. Speaking of which, we've got not a lot of these. This is an exclusive to Dawg Post. We've actually got fewer than 90 of these DAWGSTRUCTIONs signed by Kelee, Ringo remaining. If you want an awesome Christmas gift, here it is. Make sure you're taking advantage of this offer. You can only get that here. DAWGSTRUCTION was the first book that Dawg Post put out, not the last. And we'll just see how it goes. But I flipped to the game where these two played the last time in the SEC championship game, which was Georgia-Alabama in 2021. Mm-hmm. Bryce Young went to town. Is Jalen Milroe ready to party like Bryce Young was?
He's going to have to play really well.
He's not. He will have to do it a different way.
He's going to have to do it a different way because what Bryce Young did was have, at that point in time, now it could be Stetson, you argue that, but at that point in time, Bryce Young had the most impressive SEC championship game performance ever. Broke records. And
Joe Burrow was really good, too.
One of the best defenses in college football history.
And they beat the number 1 team,
Yeah, Stetson Bennett was very good the following year.
He was.
The numbers show it, so you can... kind of apples and oranges.
But let me just say this, Ryan. Uh-huh. That's what speaks to where you better be for this game.
Exactly. You need to have a quarterback that can play really well because the other team is just so good.
And the other team has a really good... it's very rare you go to this game and the other quarterback is not good. We're relaxing in eco-poly chairs. We've got folks doing yard work over here. But so if you can't hear us as well, we'll get out of this in a second because he's moving on. But you better play well in this game. And your quarterback needs to play well. There's been very few times that I can think about it. In 2005, Jamarcus Russell, he did not play well against Georgia. Georgia made him pay with a pick 6. DJ Shockley played well. David Green had a hard time against LSU in 2003, but he played well in 2002. Jake Fromm played well in 2017. They weren't asking him to do a lot, but you got to play well as a team at this moment, and special teams can matter. Yeah. Twice. Georgia's last 2 SEC championship games, block field goal from triple name from downtown Atlanta, Muckle, and then also against LSU with Christopher Smith. You'd better be ready on special teams to win this game.
Yeah, and going back to the quarterback thing, the years that you've seen where a quarterback didn't have to play really, really well in this league is when you have a Derrick Henry or someone like that.
Yeah.
And Alabama doesn't have that. Is their best offensive weapon Jermaine Burton?
Well, I think it's Milroe. I think it is Milroe.
Yeah, in all, it is Jalen Milroe.
You know, how do they contain this guy? Because he can play, man. I think he's gotten so much better. Alabama is not the same team as they were in September, no question. I think they would beat Texas right now. I think there's a lot of teams Alabama would beat, but this is not. Yeah. I mean, they're the underdog here.
Well, if you're Milroe, it will have to be the combination of extending plays with your arms and your legs.
Yeah, it's got to be both.
The way, if you want to beat Georgia, and you just look at the only examples from the last few years, what did those quarterbacks do? They could get outside the pocket and wait for things to get open and hit their guys. Does Jalen Milroe do that? Not usually, because he's taken off, and that's its own problem that Georgia will have to deal with.
Yeah, it is.
You would think that Georgia has the personnel for that when you think about how fast those linebackers are and how those DBs hit. That will be a challenge, but what has really worked against the Georgia defense is being able to extend those plays like C.J. Stroud did last year and like Joe Burrow did a few years ago.
Bryce Young, too. In the SEC championship game, I think the difference now – go ahead.
Well, like Spencer Rattler did in the first half. It's not just those games. It's like these quarterbacks have flashes like Brady Cook did. Can Jalen Milroe do that part of it as well? Because if he does that, then Georgia is in a little bit of trouble just because of how talented he is as an athlete.
Well, they're going to, you got to do it for 60 minutes against Georgia, and you probably got to do it for 60 minutes against Alabama. I mean, Georgia had the 60 minutes part has not been a problem, Ryan. It's been the last minute. You handle what you're supposed to do in 17, you've got your third national championship. In 18, they lead that game for the bulk of the game, and then they lose it in the fourth quarter because of Jalen Hurts coming off the bench. Tua was a disaster against Georgia both times. They had the lead going into the half in Tuscaloosa. They were not the better team, but they did have the lead in that game. And then, of course, in 21, they get up 10-0. Alabama really storms out to 21-17, I feel like, or something like maybe 24-17. But it felt like the game was over at the half towards Alabama. It was not, but it felt like it. And then, of course, in Indianapolis, Georgia was losing at the half 9-3.
Yeah, there were only field goals at that point. There were only field goals at that point.
6-3, whatever it was.
I think it was 9. It could have been 9-6.
I think it might have been 9-6. Jack Podnesley really, he mattered a lot in that game. So, it's just going to be a clash, and it's going to be a fight. And I don't think Georgia's I don't think that's new news to them or, everybody in Tuscaloosa.
It's what it's been. This matchup has been colossal. Dramatic. It's been legendary. It's been consequential. It's a great way to wrap up the SEC for what it's been in the last couple decades.
And you have the Texas thing hanging over Alabama for what the future will be in the league.
Exactly. It all kind of ties in there.
It does
at the end, and it might tie in for playoff implications too. But
tie in and tie up your backyard. Get the nice. If you have a pool. I know it's November, almost December. If you have a pool, these are actually really cool. You can see over the pool, and it's very comfortable. I've talked about this a lot. You can get it in different colors if you have a beach house and you want to go blue and light blue. These are just what we've got for now. Obviously, the black and gray, you can get it red and black. You can get it in whatever. They have a slew of different colors. So check out our friends at EcoPoly. The link is right down below, Ryan. 15% off, and you can get free shipping, which at this time of the year is important. I would take a look at it now. They've got some great deals. Georgia's going to have to deal with Milroe. That's going to be tough.
Is he the best they've played? They would have played?
Not quarterback. No, not quarterback.
No, but offensive weapon? Yeah, he's up there for most dangerous.
He's trouble.
If you can, I can't remember what his craziest stat line was, but I think it was 6 total touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 3 through the air. That's danger. That's danger time.
Well, the only thing I would say about Milroe, as he has played well as the season's gone on, Alabama, again, they're playing better now than they did at the beginning of the year, even in the middle. They have been up and down a little bit on offense. The game against Arkansas was not ideal. You know, you're going to get that was a home game.
Neither was A&M. This is not the dominant Alabama team.
It's not, and you're going to get that.
Alabama team.
I'm sorry to keep talking to me, but you are going to get that in football. I mean, you're not going to play well every single time you go out, but you know, he really is trouble, and we're talking a lot about him. They do have Burton. The running backs are pretty good. The offensive line, I think, is maybe not what it's been during Nick's best. I mean, Nick's probably best offensive line was either 12 or 20. Those were exceptional offensive lines. But they don't have any chumps that are starting at Alabama. They never have, and none are Nick Saban. And so I don't think that's going to start anytime soon. But I think, you know, Georgia should win this game. But this isn't going to just be some roll the ball out there and you routine Alabama. Alabama's got it all on the line, just like Georgia does. This is going to be a clash of the Titans again.
Yeah, and that was the problem 2 years ago for Georgia, was that Alabama had a lot more on the line and Georgia didn't. How much will that have factored into the way they played? It obviously seems like it at least factored in a little bit on that day 2 years ago.
Yeah,
it feels like it.
Well, Georgia, let me say this too. Georgia's defense has, I think, played a little longer into games than they did in 21, it feels like. Now, I don't know if that's completely accurate. It feels that way.
The starters were not playing in the fourth quarter a lot of games, and they have in some of these games.
I do remember Devontae Wyatt being in the game and kneeling pretty late in 2021, but not, you know, I don't know.
And so were some of the starters the other day.
Yeah, you know, I think Georgia's played deeper rotations. Not the Ole Miss game, but necessarily, and maybe not Tech.
Well, the rotation on defense has not been as deep as the year has gone on. I think they rotated a lot towards the beginning of the year. I feel like on defense they're rotating less often early as the year has gone on. That's kind of been my observation, but Georgia's offense is going to have to play well too. I feel like the whole conversation we've had today has been about Alabama's, Alabama's offense and Jalen Milroe. Yeah. But the other way around, and like we've talked about in previous videos, Georgia will also have to execute. So that will be a good Alabama defense.
Well, I think the word you just used is the key phrase here is, can Alabama execute against Georgia's defense for 60 minutes? Not a lot of people have. Okay? Not a lot of people have. South Carolina played pretty well for a half. Shane Beamer got into his feelings, started talking about stuff. Auburn took advantage of some turnovers from the Dogs. What happens if Alabama turns the ball over? So Alabama's got some penalty issues. There are some issues there for Alabama that are not comfortable the way that you would like. So Georgia's the best team in the country. They should win this game, but they got to go out and do it, Ryan.
Yeah, they've got to go out and do it just like it has done the last few weeks. Yeah. Playing against these really good teams, they've showed up and answered the bell. But the complacency part of it too, like we were talking about 2 years ago, was complacency as much of an issue when they hadn't been winning? They hadn't been used to winning like that quite yet. So now I think they've got that a little bit more under control because the threat of complacency has been bigger now that they've done all this winning national championships and everything like that. I feel like they'll be more lasered in than they were 2 years ago, if we're really arguing that they weren't.
So I have sources, obviously, inside the program, and their concern was that they just watched Auburn, just watched Bama Auburn, watched Bama
barely win.
Exactly. They got up 10-0, and I think they sort of thought, we got these guys, and Alabama wasn't done. Kirby, I think. Listen, I think Alabama's the biggest test for Georgia. But I think Oregon would be a pretty big test too. We're going to have to see how all of this plays out. We don't know who's going to be in the playoff yet. Georgia might not be in the playoff. So, but I think Kirby will have these guys locked. This team has gotten to the point now where all of the non-important games are over, and they have been coming out in these important games ready to party. Florida. And I would say Missouri too. To be honest with you, they just didn't crush them because Missouri's pretty good. They're not. Bama. Excuse me. The way they beat Ole Miss was pretty bad, but I think the way they beat Tennessee might have been worse. Not. I mean, I know they beat Ole Miss by worse in terms of the score.
Because Ole Miss had a quarter of scoring and being able to get down the field. For Tennessee, it was literally one play. And then outside of that, yes, they got to the red zone a couple times, but they didn't execute.
No, they didn't. And both these teams are going to have to do that to win. We'll see you at the Dome on Saturday. Thanks for watching.